allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, next we need to approve our agenda. Are there any additions or questions or anything on the agenda? If not, could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Next, we have the minutes. Did anybody have any questions, corrections, additions to the minutes? If not, could I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes from the regular study and the voting session meeting on December 7th, 2021 as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes from the regular study and voting session meeting of December 7, 2021 as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right. Next, we have some presentations. And I'd like to start by doing just a little introduction of what it is that we're doing here. The past 2 years, all of our PUSD employees have been asked to work harder and to do things they've never had to do before. To let them know how much their efforts are appreciated, the board is instituting a process this year to publicly recognize the exceptional contributions made by each PUSD employee. Every month at our regular board meeting, we will honor one or more employee groups. In addition to an official declaration at the meeting, our superintendent and one or more board members will attend a staff meeting to personally extend our appreciation to the group. Students, other staff, and families will also be encouraged to thank members of that month's honored groups through posts on the PUSD Facebook page or more directly to individuals. We want every employee in the district to feel the love and to know how special they are to us. So, this evening, come around here. Okay, we're kicking off this venture by declaring January as Bus Driver and Facilities and Grounds Month. We have asked their supervisors, Kim Barker and Chris Moody, and a few of our bus drivers and facilities and grounds employees to join us tonight and to share this recognition with their cohorts. As far as bus drivers, parents, do you appreciate not having to bundle up to drive your students to school? Teachers, are you glad when your students arrive safely to school? Students, are you happy you don't have to walk miles to school? You can thank our bus drivers for these things and many more. Kim Barker, the head of our bus drivers, we would ask you to introduce your representatives to us this evening.
I'm shorter. Tonight I brought Carol O'Neill, who is our Route 1 bus driver, and I also brought Kip Lavin, who is a special needs driver, but he is also our supervisor underneath of all the drivers. He helps me out tremendously.
Thank you, Kip. I understand that Kip is willing to tell us a little bit about the duties and expectations for the PUSD. I spent 4.5 hours driving today. Sorry, guys. PUSD bus drivers. So can you tell us a little bit about what you do, what's expected of you?
All right. The first thing is we check our buses for safety every day, twice a day, in the morning, afternoon, and after the runs to make sure they're safe for the kids. Secondly, we attend trainings and do maneuvers, teach everybody all the time what we're supposed to be doing, and make sure that they can drive. That's the main thing. And the biggest thing is the safety of the kids. We transport them to and from school as safe as possible in a timely manner to make sure that everybody's safe. That's the biggest thing, I guess. So that's
We
what
appreciate that.
Yes, that's the main thing. Getting there on time and safely. So.
All right. The PUSD Governing Board declares January Bus Driver Appreciation Month. If one of you would come and get the certificate, that would be great. Thank you. Oh, they want your picture, ladies.
We gotta get some nice smiling faces. Smiling mask.
There you go. Honey, you want to stand on this side so I can just get one? There you go. Okay. All right. 1, 2, 3. Thank you for indulging.
Thanks, you guys.
All right, for our facilities and grounds. Teachers, are you happy when you arrive each morning to a clean and orderly classroom? Students, do you appreciate safe, well-maintained athletic spaces? Parents, are you glad when neither you nor your students have to worry about falling on the ice on the way into the school building? You can thank our facilities and grounds crews for all of those things. So, Chris, would you first of all please introduce us to your staff?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Bill Arndt, and he's the supervisor for facilities, the foreman. And Tom House, he's the grounds supervisor foreman.
Terrific. So I understand, Chris, you would be willing to tell us a little bit about some of the duties and expectations of the facilities and grounds crew.
Well, it's a collaboration, really. So it starts with the bus barn very early in the morning. And these guys come in early as well as the rest of the grounds and facilities to prepare for that on snowy days, because safety's first, and they work excellent together. So also, we have a system at our schools. It's a work order process. So if you have something broken in your classroom that needs repaired, you put in a work order request and we log it that way. I would like to say this is the first time we've ever hit 0 work orders that I've ever been here. Then they can manage moving forward, not, you're working in a behind pattern. So they've been outstanding at doing that. And then safety, and really they care about the children. They talk about what they can do for the children as being their first priority. So that's the most impressive part for me.
Terrific. Thank you, Chris.
You bet.
All right. And we have a certificate for you, and the PUSD Governing Board declares January as Facilities and Grounds Appreciation Month.
Thank you.
So,
Where do you want? All right, I'll get in the back. You gonna come with us?
You're it. All right. 1, 2, 3. Smile. Good job. Thank you.
and we thank all of you for everything that you do, and be sure to pass that along to the rest of the students.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks for doing that.
Yes, thank you.
highlighting you on Facebook, so get ready.
Oh, no. We should have drew a smile on our face.
Yeah.
We'll Photoshop it in.
All right, the next item on our agenda is a presentation of information from Discovery Gardens Preschool. Stacy.
Hi and good evening. My name is Stacy.
And we have
Williams.
Stacy
I am
Williams, the
preschool
director
for
of Discovery Gardens.
Yeah, we'll play her video first, and there's some really neat data that we're excited about today.
on 4 campuses. Discovery Gardens is at Washington Elementary School, Taylor Hicks, Abaya Judd, and Lincoln. This evening, I am sharing with you some of our data collection that we've done over the past year. Each year, our school is expected to enroll all children with IEPs, developmental delays, online with the state in a program that's called Teaching Strategies Gold. Teaching Strategies Gold has 75 plus checkpoints that we are to monitor quarterly on every single child that we enroll with an IEP. Throughout the quarter, teachers take pictures, anecdotal records, and document on the checkpoints where every child is. This helps us to differentiate with lesson planning and the different activities throughout the classroom. Every child has a print up that shows where they are developmentally and in their age bracket so that we can better work on the early state standards and Teaching Strategies Gold standards as well. They both do correlate very well. Just in the teaching strategies, they're a little bit more specific for the teachers to work on and do give them lessons and ideas of what they can do to help the children to make growth in all strategies, especially those that they are not on a trajectory of up, maybe they're stable or they haven't made progress. It helps them to know what are the next steps and how to implement those better. On this first slideshow, in the red and blue, you have a summary sheet that the ADE, Arizona Department of Education, sent out on December 3rd. And this showed where we, in blue, the district is, and where in red, the rest of the state is. Up until 2 years ago, we did do teaching strategies on all students, but because we've come across some more expectations through some of our other ways of growth, development, providing information to our grantors like Quality First, we have other ways that we collect even more data. So that's why for this last 2 years, the only students that are on Teaching Strategies Gold are those students with IEPs. So before we were always way above, it was super exciting, but this is actually even better. With our students with IEPs, we are still exceeding in all these areas. The area of social emotional, we were at 83%, where the state was at 61. And then as you can look down for knowledge and skills, those are our academics. The state was at 63, we are at 100%. And I'll explain what that means in a minute. It doesn't mean that they knew everything, it just means that their outcomes were good. And then the bottom one, adaptive skills, the state was at 62 and we were at 75. So on the left side is where we have this better explained. The first one says summary statement of those children who entered the program below age expectations in each outcome, the percent who substantially increased their rate of growth by the time they turned 6 years of age or better. So basically this means they came into the program no matter where they were on those checkpoints, they made enough growth that they were where they were expected to be within that age range. So not that they made growth just themselves, just each quarter making a little bit of change and a little bit of knowledge learning, a little bit of social emotional. This is that they made growth into the age bracket where they should be by the time they exited out of the program. The next bullet, percentage of children who changed growth trajectories. So these are the students who were either not doing well, were on a downhill climb, but by the end of that year, we're all up and where they should be, again, by the age of 6 or the time that they graduated to kindergarten. We typically don't have 6-year-olds. We have in the past, if parents choose to bring them back to the preschool for one more year. Typically all of our kids are turning 5 as they earn their way out of preschool. The final one, again, is it talks about the growth and what that meaning is, but it's the expected gains and substantial increases that this what percent had we grown in substantial growth trajectories. And that's the most exciting part, is we have surpassed the state in one area, reaching 100%, meaning that all the kids, as they transitioned out into that area of knowledge and skills for preschool, pre-K needs, they were at 100%. They were at age level when they tested out and moved into kindergarten that year. This next slide is very similar. Again, you can look at the state averages, which are in red, and the district average, which is in blue, and we are well above the state's average for where these students are as they exit into kindergarten. For these indicators, the state was looking at the percent of children who are functioning within age expectations in each outcome by the time they turned 6 years of age or exited into kindergarten. Also, it looked at the percentage of children functioning like same age peers when they left the program, and it includes those who started behind and caught up and entered and exited at age level. So again, for Prescott Unified School students who went to kindergarten, that's anywhere between 80% in social emotional, 70% in knowledge and skills, and 70% in adaptive skills. Discovery Garden's teachers and students work very hard each year. For the last 4 years, we've looked at the goal of looking at social emotional, making sure that every child feels heard, understood, can stand up for themselves, knows how to share and communicate. And with them being able to do all that, we really believe that's what's made them successful in everything that they do. If they're confident and comfortable in the classroom, the education is so easy to follow suit. They want to learn, they want to participate, they want to engage each other and explore, and they want to make their teachers so proud. I am very blessed to be a big part of Prescott Unified School District. The preschool is the place to be. I wake up every morning wanting to go to work. It's never a sad day. Thank you for your time, and thank you for supporting Discovery Gardens.
Nice work, Stacy. Does anyone from the board have questions or comments for Stacy?
Well, I guess as one of the liaisons to, and Stacy already said all this to her, but, you know, she's just a dynamo, that's all I can say. She is, everyone loves her at Discovery Gardens. Everybody has a good time. The fact that she was able to get the Jewish Community Center involved in the new playground, which, if you haven't seen it, it's fabulous. It's right outside the door here. She is all about the kids, all about them. You know, she knows all their little quirks, all the things they need. She is kind. She teaches them to be kind. No fighting on the playground. So I just give her a lot of credit, because this is a tough, it's fun and it's worthwhile, but it's kind of difficult, and she has good aides and people to help her out. I just think she's a real gem in the in her role. I've never met anybody that's so good with young kids. So.
Well, thank you, Stacy.
Yeah, we're really, I mean, you know, early childhood is so important, and we're really getting a great start for our students at Discovery Gardens. And one of our bigger accomplishments there is, over the last few years, we, a year at a time, we've satellited out to the elementary schools with pre-Ks, so that those kiddos could start in their neighborhood school and then continue on. So it's been neat to watch the progress for Discovery Gardens. But when we see data like this, we know that it's working.
Yeah, my question for Stacy or anyone is just how many students are currently enrolled in pre-K, and then what percentage of them go on to attend kindergarten in PUSD?
So I usually know the exact answer to that, but
just so they can hear you out in cyberland.
Stacy, 160.
How many?
6.
Oh, thank you. I usually know the answer to that. So we just added a brand new classroom and we're shifting kids around. So 166 is what I'm being told. Typically about a quarter of those kiddos are students with IEPs. This year, I think we're transitioning around 55 kids to kindergarten. And then again, probably a quarter of those kids will have IEPs and they'll transition to those schools.
So this data was just for IEP children?
Yeah. So we, like I said, we always look really good. We've always added all of our kids and we have a large majority of general education population. So when this one came out, still showing that we're still above where the rest of the schools are throughout the state, we're very lucky, yeah.
I don't think it's luck.
I have, you know what, I have amazing staff. And I tell you what, if they're happy and you walk in those rooms and they're playing, they're happy, things are going well, you know you're doing the right thing. So there's never, I'm super lucky. Amazing teachers, like I was just saying, we have a new one that just landed from Las Vegas. I'm hoping that she gets to start in the next couple days, early childhood special ed. So every time we need something, it seems to fall right in our laps.
Good. Thank you for the information.
You're welcome, thank you.
Our next presentation is Rachel Chunglo, our Director of Online Learning, here to tell us about PUSD Everywhere.
PUSD Everywhere program. So just to kind of give an update on where we are currently at, we have about 34 students in our program at the moment. We did get up to a little over 50 in first semester, but we had a good chunk of them return back in person at the start of the semester. So now we are down to 34. All still K-12 ranges, mostly high school students, as you would kind of expect for online learning, but we do still have some elementary and middle school students online. But I want to give you an update on where we are at for next year and our full launch of PUSD Everywhere. So right now the plan for next year is to have 3 options available for students. So we have our K-8 full online, our 9-12 full online, and our 7 through 12 hybrid. So there is going to be a difference in the formatting for K-8 and 9 through 12, which is why I broke those up into different sections. And then hybrid we felt would be best to implement for our 7th through 12th for next year. We may look at implementing it into 5th and 6th the following year. We will have some kind of hybrid options available to the full online students, but it won't be the same as like half in person, half online that will be available to those older students. So our K-8 full online is going to be a combination of both live and asynchronous instruction. What we found with the younger kiddos, especially this year, having fully asynchronous was really difficult, especially if they didn't have a parent at home to work with them each day. So implementing some of that live instruction from a core teacher is going to really help those kiddos to understand the content, comprehend, and stay on pace with their in-person peers. Another shift for the K-8 program is that we will be moving away from schools PLP for K-8 and utilizing more of the PUSD curriculum that is being used in person. So our Engage New York math curriculum, for K-4 our Into Reading ELA curriculum, and then whatever ends up being adopted for 5th through 12th, we'll be using that ELA curriculum as well as adapting some of our science and social studies. We will still use schools PLP for elective options if a student chooses virtual electives, but we felt that it would be more appropriate for our students to be using the same curriculum as their in-person peers, especially those who transition at semester, just trying to keep them all on the same pace, learning the same content at the same time so that there's no gaps in learning depending on which modality they're in. We will be using PUSD teachers rather than the school's PLP teachers. So we're looking at adding two teachers for that K-8 program. And then depending on our numbers, we would grow that. Right now, based on our numbers, I think that we would be good with just 2 teachers dedicated solely to our K-8 online. Students in the full online will have an option of taking virtual electives, or they will have the option of coming in person for electives or for the specials rotations at the K-4 level. For 9th through 12th full online, it will be all asynchronous. Most of the high school students handled asynchronous just fine. They needed someone to kind of keep them motivated and keep them on track, but they were able to grasp the content from the asynchronous curriculum. So we will continue with that format. We will continue also to use some of school's PLP. We found that school's PLP, that curriculum worked really well for those older grades, that 7th through 12th. Most of them are able to make it through that curriculum and stay on pace with their peers. But we also will be implementing some of the PUSD curriculum as well online. So we'll trying to come up with a balance between the two to where students are still having access and exposure to the curriculum that they would in person, but have some more opportunities that schools PLP can provide. But even as we use schools PLP, we also want to transition into having our PUSD teachers being in charge of those online classes. We want it to be a familiar face, somebody that they could check in with in person if needed, and just someone who's a little more accessible. It's been great to have those schools PLP teachers this year, especially since we kind of jumped into online this year so quickly. But now that we've had time to plan and structure, we really think that using our teachers will make the experience more impactful for our students and just be a better all-around program. And we do actually have a lot of interest in our online program from those PUSD teachers, so we're not too worried about the staffing side of it. Again, for 9 through 12, they also will have the option of in-person or virtual electives. We especially want to make sure, this goes for all of the K-12 online, that those students still have the option to be in some of those performing arts programs such as choir or band, and still get that full experience even if they choose to take a lot of their classes online. So that will be an option available to students. And then, like I said, our hybrid option will be available next year only for 7th through 12th. So this will be 3 to 4 in-person courses. It will depend on the grade level. For most, it will be 4. Some of our upper level high school students may only take 3 in-person classes. And then it would be 2 to 3 online courses. So they might spend half their day in person getting some core instruction or attending some of those performing arts electives, and then they would do the remainder of their schoolwork from home. This will be a really great option for some of our students who have jobs in high school, some of our students in traveling sports who need a little more flexibility with their schedule. So that hybrid option will give them that chance to still be an in-person student, but ensure that they are still getting a full education for the year. And we are going to limit space on the hybrid for this coming up school year, just so we can make sure that scheduling wise, we have a good balance and that we're not filling up too many classes in the morning and then not having enough in the afternoon, and trying to find that right balance to our schedule where it's not going to put a burden on the in-person classes as well. And at the bottom there, you can see for all 3 options, there will be a lab space available. We are working on kind of our best location for that, but The hope would be that, if a student is in the online program and, their internet goes out for the day, rather than having a whole day of no school, they could pop in, use the computers there, get some help if they're struggling with their Chromebook or their own device isn't working. That would also be where the live teachers for the K-8 would reside, and they would be available for some tutoring or some one-on-one help. And it would also be our lab space for testing, for benchmark testing, state testing, finals, all of those good things that we do require to be done in person. So kind of our next steps for our program is to promote it. This year we didn't really advertise that we had PUSD Everywhere. It was used more as a necessity for families, but we really want to promote and share and discuss this program now that we are getting it fully off the ground. I'll be working with the webmaster to create a website that will launch with the new website when that launches, and I'll be working with Rebecca Horniman on best ways to promote and spread the word about our program. Pre-registration for all the schools is coming up, so we will be adding a option on the pre-registration form for parents to mark interest on that will help us to get numbers and determine how many are interested in online, which will help for hiring. Like I said, I right now I'm hoping to hire 2 full-time teachers for K-8, and then we will be looking at the schedule for the high school on how we can best rearrange that to use our high school teachers to support the online 9th through 12th grade students. But all that comes with needing to know the numbers, so that's our first kind of big step there, is knowing how many are interested. We will also be adding an application process for this coming up year. So previously we were allowing any student who was interested in PUSD Everywhere to come join in. We did this due to COVID, due to some other health concerns that were going on, but it is not the best format for all students. And so in order to ensure that students can be successful in this format, we are going to require an application process with a teacher recommendation. So that way we can kind of make sure that students have the supports in place that they would need to be successful, and it will just help the families, I think, to be aware of all the work that does go into this option. We will collect those applications and review them during the summer as we start planning scheduling, and that way we can let families know right away if they've been accepted into the program. It really, our online is not going to be as limited as the hybrid option for this coming up year, but we do still want to make sure that all of our families are aware of the expectations and requirements. And then the last kind of future plan that we have going forward is to get that lab space set up so that we have a place for students to come in, work on assignments. One of the requirements will be to meet with me or one of the teachers prior to starting, so that will also be as part of that lab space. So that is our current plan. I believe an application, you should be getting a copy of the application, and we will keep you up to date on any other changes between now and next school year. Thank you.
Rachel, are you setting up lab spaces in all the schools, or will it be one universal lab?
Right now, the thought is one universal lab, just because
Do you
we
know
are
where-
limited
Where
on
it's gonna be at the high
space.
school?
We don't know yet.
Oh, okay.
I don't know for sure yet, so
We have some
would-
ideas.
Yeah. I would love to have a lab at every school, but that'd be pretty difficult to accomplish.
But we could build into that.
Other questions or comments for Rachel?
I'm just curious on the application process. What kind of factors are you looking at to determine if you think a student would be successful in this, or if they're not, how do you break that news to a parent?
Yeah. So kind of the part of the process there, if you kind of look through the application, it's also for the parents to kind of see all the expectations and them to really decide that, yes, we do think that this will work well. It's not really that we're weeding out, that I'll be looking at them to weed out, but it's really just so that parents can fully understand before they commit to this program. But a teacher recommendation is going to be one of the pieces. So based on how they did during distance learning, how they did, if they have previously been in PUSD Everywhere and prep, and if they were able to handle that, and then kind of what supports they have. So if this is a kid that, mom and dad are working all day or alternating shifts, and there's not really anybody there that can kind of check in and help, we might try them out, but with the idea that we'd reevaluate later on how successful they're being, because we just don't want to get to a point where they've spent a semester or spent a year and now they're a year behind and we're trying to catch them up the next year in person. So we're just wanting to make sure that, if they do choose this, that they understand the commitment and that they feel like they can handle it.
Okay.
And we learned a lot in the last year, and I'm talking about when we were in school and families or kids opted to be in these programs. And we did have to have some tough discussions when things weren't working and say, let's try something different.
Rachel, will students need to stay in whatever they choose for the whole year, for a semester, for?
Right now, I've been leaning towards keeping it as semester. That seemed to work well this year. We made it to December and I did have to have a few kind of tough conversations in December, and doing it at the quarter last year during prep was really difficult. We had scheduling, it was a nightmare, and then for high school students, they're potentially losing out on credits because of that semester change. So it would definitely need to be at least a semester commitment. I'm okay with not with just the semester and not requiring a full year, because especially some of those families might need it for, if I'm in baseball, I might need it for spring semester, but I don't really need it for the fall or something like that. So, but just, it would be a semester-long commitment just to make sure that credit-wise for those high school students, they don't miss out on anything, and then that gives us plenty of time to adjust schedules as needed if they are returning or switching online.
And if a family moves into the district midterm, will they have the option for this, or do they have to be started from the beginning of the semester?
They would have the option. That's part of why we're backing off of schools PLP a bit, is that it is a little harder to transition in versus using our curriculum and our teachers. It would be the same as if they were coming in person anyways, so that that would make it a little easier for us to add people in mid-year. It's not ideal to add them anywhere, but I know that's always the case. We always have kids that move from other states and that. So I think that switching into our curriculum will make that transition smoother.
Okay.
I appreciate the effort you've put into this process and really looking at how to make it work. So, thank you.
Yeah, it's been nice that this, we weren't planning this year to have a program, but it has been nice to have it and learn from it and see what has worked, and doing a format completely different than how prep was last year and seeing what the strengths were last year versus this year. And I've had a couple parents who have done both, and they've given me some insight on what they liked about prep better, what they've liked about this year. A lot of the elementary parents actually like the asynchronous format of schools PLP. They just didn't like that there wasn't kind of a a face-to-face teacher that their kid was having a relationship with. So that's the hope with doing a mixture of the live and asynchronous, is that they would get the best of both worlds from that.
And do you have any sense of interest?
Right now, no, but we also haven't really pushed it, and that's what I'm hoping with registration, is that we'll get a better idea. I have a feeling, and Mr. Neely and I have talked about this, that at the high school we're going to see a huge explosion of interest. That's kind of why we wanted to limit the hybrid for this, as we are starting it up and just kind of seeing how that goes. And I don't want to blow their master schedule up with having everybody have I only have to take 4 classes in person and I can leave at lunch. That might draw a lot of interest, but.
And remind me when the pre-registration goes out.
End of next week.
Okay.
At least for K6. I'm not quite sure on the timeline for Mile High and the high school.
Okay. And with regards to the staffing, because you mentioned in the presentation that it's not always the best model for every learner, and it's also not always the best model for every teacher. So I'm curious about, you mentioned like there was some interest from current teachers. What kind of actions, or how is that application different for teachers that want to teach in this program versus in the classroom? And my other question is are we imagining that it's a separate teacher completely, or is it somebody that's working in the classroom as well?
So right now the thought is, depending on interest, if we have 30 high school students who want to take English online, we would build in a section assigning a teacher. They wouldn't have a live class, but they would have an extra prep within their schedule, which would be dedicated to them being able to do online. We have talked about what the application for teachers will look like. That is not finalized. All we did, I sent out an interest survey to the high school teachers just to see, is this something that they would even want to do, or is schools PLP the better option for us to stick with? And we did have quite a few teachers that were interested. So it was sent out with the understanding that this was not your application, this is just to gauge interest, and then there would be an application piece to kind of being deemed one of those teachers.
Anything else for Rachel? Okay, thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
Exciting to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, our next item is our information only. Mr. Joe.
Great start to 2022. We hit the ground running. Today, we snuck up on high school Spanish teacher Laura Brubaker, PHS style. So that means we snuck up with the entire marching band, made a lap around the whole school, stopped in front of her classroom, tricked her. She did not know why we were there. But we had just recently found out that she has finished her national board certification, and she is now the second teacher after Rachel Chungalo to earn that honor. Big work, 2 years worth of work, and so it was really neat to surprise her with that, and you'll be hearing more and seeing more, and we're hoping we're starting a culture with that. We're hoping that Rachel has started a culture with that, because it's one of the higher honors you can earn as a teacher. So that was really exciting. Connie mentioned last Thursday we had our ribbon cutting for the Jewish Community Foundation playground here at Discovery Gardens. It was great, and thank you for being there, Connie. Neat crowd, and our preschoolers were there demonstrating for everyone. They didn't seem to have a problem with that. But I just want to mention Jewish Community Foundation has affected us before then, K-12, now pre-K-12, but they have donated so many things, including a huge amount of band instruments to middle school, that entire computer lab project at Prescott High School, which is a gem for us. So they're just a great partner, and we're super excited to work with them. And then I just wanted to give a quick cyber alert. Hopefully a lot of you saw an email, but an ingenious way to destroy networks in schools and businesses. Someone is sending USBs through the post office and through UPS and marking them as free USBs. So if you get one, throw it away and call IT, because they're not USBs. You stick them in your computer and they will go right into our network and start destroying it. So I would fall for that. So I just wanted to warn people, and we sent that out to all of our staff, but USBs are not an okay thing to get unless you know their background nowadays. So that's what I have. Deb?
Okay. Any board members have anything you want to share? Okay, we'll move along to the consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments on any of the items in the consent agenda?
I had one, Brian can probably answer it. What were all the $500 stipends for the Discovery Gardens?
Excuse me. So Discovery Gardens, Maria, she got a grant that was able to pay teachers and staff members some additional money and have it linked to a professional development. It's a little bit similar to what we did at the high school last year with the $1,000 overload for having the distance learning. But this was specifically something that could say thank you to our Discovery Garden preschool staff members. And so in order to get the $500, they attended a professional development, and this grant was able to pay them the $500.
So we were just like a clearinghouse for the grant, like the grant came into PUSD, because we don't pay Discovery Gardens, right? They're on their own.
Yeah, it's a combination.
Well, tuition. We pay them, but it's through tuition.
Okay, so it was just kind of the grant came in and then we
Yeah,
paid it out.
the way the grants work is they have parameters of what we can spend it on, and in this case, it was linked to a professional development, and the staff members were able to get the $500 in appreciation for everything they do.
So it was specifically for the pre-K?
Yes.
Anything else? As you know, I am hesitant to point out specific donors because I appreciate everything people do for us. But there were three that I did want to point out this month. The Yavapai Prescott Indian Tribe gave us a total of $7,000 in various grants. We appreciate the cooperation with the tribe. Next, we got $22,000 from the PUSD Education Foundation to support projects and so on for teachers. And then there was a couple of private citizens, and I'm going to mispronounce their last name, I'm quite sure. It was Larry and Marcy Lage, L-A-G-E. Anyway, whoever you are, wherever you are, they made gifts to 4 of our schools. And I just wanted to let them know that we appreciate that effort. So, all right, anything else on the consent agenda? Could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. All right, we are up to the study and voting session. Can I assume we have no speakers, Sarah? No, we do. All right. First item on our study and voting session is our yearly election of officers for this board. So we'll begin with the position of president. Nominations.
I'd like to nominate Deb Dillon for president of the PUSD Governing Board.
I would accept that. Any other nominations? All right. Then we need to vote on that.
You need a second?
We need a second, yes.
Second, I second
All
that
right.
nomination.
It's been moved and seconded that we elect Deb Dillon as president again for the next year. All those in favor say aye.
I,
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. I appreciate that. Then we also need a governing board vice president. I have a thought on this, and I'll just throw it out there. 3 of our members are at least considering running for offices this year, whether it's, repeating in here or another office or whatever. So the only other person besides myself who is not running is Andy, and so I would like to nominate Andy for vice president for this year.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we elect Andy Freyer, vice president. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Andy.
thank you.
All right, moving on. The next item is we're looking again at a second reading on policy BEDH. Joe?
Yeah, we really, Marty highlighted this last time, but we really changed one line, basically to get consistent with our practice, is we gave some leeway. If people didn't turn their request to speak in before the meeting, we gave some leeway and kind of let them do that up until the voting items began. And so the board talked about that at the retreat and said we should probably formalize that into our policy if we're practicing it, which I agree is good practice. And so there's just one quick change in there to say that we'll accept those up until we begin the voting session, each meeting.
I'll move that we adopt changes to policy BEDH as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the changes to policy BEDH as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right. The next 2 are intergovernmental agreements. Joe? Or is it
Yeah, I think
Brian?
my name's on there.
Okay.
You may have seen us working more and more with our smaller schools, even some charter schools, with things like our instructional outreach program. And so that spurred more conversations with, especially schools like Skull Valley, Yarnell, Kirkland, that feed into Prescott High School, so they're tuition schools. So we stay in touch a lot with their administrators and their teachers. And we've been providing some services. This is just another one. We actually provided this in the past, sometime in the past decade, a bit on and off. And they asked for that again, and that's that we train their bus drivers. So we have a pretty robust training program that gets people certified to drive, and so they would just be sending their people to us for that one.
Any questions? Okay. Could I get a motion to approve?
I move we approve the intergovernmental agreement between PUSD number 1 and Skull Valley Elementary School District number 15 for bus driver training, as presented.
All right.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve an intergovernmental agreement between Prescott Unified School District number 1 and Skull Valley Elementary School District number 15 for bus driver training as presented. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes.
On this next one, very similar. I should mention on both of these there is money exchanged. That's negotiated out, but and I'll also mention that on both of them, our council has looked at them. We share council with with them. There's a waiver on that. But their board has also reviewed both of these IGAs and approved them. So this one is for repair and maintenance on buses.
Questions? Could I get them?
They don't store them at our bus depot, do they?
No, but sometimes during the day though, you know, because they'll come up and then spend the day and then take them back home.
Oh.
So lots of different partnerships around that.
Any other questions?
I move that we approve an intergovernmental agreement between Prescott Unified School District Number 1 and Skull Valley Elementary School District Number 15 for bus maintenance and repair as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve an intergovernmental agreement between Prescott Unified School District Number 1 and Skull Valley Elementary School District Number 15 for bus maintenance and repair as presented. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, the last item on our voting agenda is approving a full-time kindergarten teaching position at Lincoln. Clark.
Hello, you may recall a couple of months, can you hear me okay? I'm in my second week of symptomless COVID protocols, so I'm okay to be here, but I should probably stay masked if you can hear me okay. Yes? Good. All right. You might recall, I think it was 2 months ago, we came to you and mentioned that our class sizes at Lincoln are higher than we anticipated, which is a good problem to have in most respects, but it needs to be dealt with. The initial solution that Principal Karen Hughes came up with for the board to consider was to approve a paraprofessional who would provide assistance in the younger grades, and an additional paraprofessional. They've already got some who are doing that, and the board gave a unanimous thumbs up to that. We posted that. We've gone about 6 weeks, and nobody's interested in being an additional paraprofessional in the younger grades in Lincoln. So we talked about what our next best option would be to make sure that students are receiving the individualized attention that they need in classes, and Mrs. Hughes decided that she would propose to the district administrative team to do what is typically done in cases when class sizes are very, very large. It can be a little bit more disruptive, but that is namely to hire another teacher and reduce the class sizes. So instead of having 2 sections of kindergarten, in this case those are the largest class sizes in the places where the impact is being felt the most, to hire a 3rd kindergarten teacher. That would take some pressure off of the parapro assignment on the kindergarten level so that they could help out in the other grade levels. So there would be some amelioration of the issues in 1st and 2nd grade, and then of course make a big impact in kindergarten. So we are coming to the board for approval of that.
Do we have money to pay for this?
Yes, and it's part of our proactive budgeting, in which we analyze class sizes and needs after we pass our budget package. And then we analyze whether or not we use one-time monies, like our carry forward or ESSER money. And then if the needs to be sustained, it's built into the budget. So the answer is yes.
Yeah, and generally, it's worth remembering that when we have increased enrollment, there's increased funding that comes with that. And so this would essentially, the increased enrollment in kindergarten is partially paying for that beyond the specifics that Brian just shared.
Remind me why we went with the paraprofessional route to begin with as opposed to a 3rd
Yeah,
teacher?
great question, because there's higher class sizes in 3 different grade levels, first of all, and they were hoping to get a little bit of extra coverage in each of those 3 grade levels. That's the first. But secondly, most importantly, it's kind of disruptive in some ways. The positives in this case we feel like are going to outweigh the negatives, but one of the negatives is all these kids, there's 28 of them or something, they've gotten used to Mrs. Jones for the first half of the year, and now they're going to be placed in Mrs. Brown's class instead. The good news is when you get only 19 kids in Mrs. Brown's class, the dynamic changes pretty quickly. And as Mrs. Hughes has reached out to parents and said, hey, this is a plan that we're asking our board to consider, there's been great parent support for that.
What size will the classes be now?
Like I say, we're looking at class sizes of close to 20 at this point. 19, I think, is where we'd be at, which is it's terrific. That's better than we're usually looking at for kindergarten. We like to max out kindergarten at about 24 when we can. And they started the year close to 30. They've settled in 29, 28, I think. And this will bring us down to, like I say, about 19 per class, which is terrific.
Other questions?
Do we have space for this classroom?
Yep, great question. Mrs. Hughes has been creative with the way that she's been using her space for various things, and so she's moved some folks out of that size of classroom and said, hey, we're going to need you to be in this closet here or this space here, that type of a thing, so that she's got a classroom size area for a new class. Good question, yeah.
If there's a desk in there, it's called an office.
There you go. That's how we roll. That's how we roll.
Have we had 3 kindergarten teachers before?
At Lincoln, we certainly do have 3 at the other schools all the time, and at Lincoln we have in the past, yes. It's been a couple of years since we've had 3 sections of kindergarten, but we have in the past. Good question.
Since the problem is kind of all over, not just in kindergarten, have we looked at just getting volunteers to come in as like substitute parapros to, help out?
Yeah, so great question. We have volunteers coming into our schools throughout this year, and there certainly are there. Are we looking at adding additional volunteers to try to fix the problem of 30 in the class? We haven't looked at that, but we have had volunteers coming to support throughout the school year, and Mrs. Hughes feels like we need to do something more than just have occasional volunteers stop by. Or something in addition to, I should say.
Okay, if there are no further questions or comments, could I get a motion?
Motion to approve a full-time kindergarten teaching position at Lincoln Elementary School as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve a full-time kindergarten teaching position at Lincoln Elementary School as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right, we will move along to the information and discussion items. Mr. Moore.
As presented.
Thank you. Kelly Bradstreet, our Director of Instructional Support. Kelly's going to tell us a little bit about the ELA curriculum adoption process.
Yes, hopefully Cara knows all of this information too. She's on the committee, which is really exciting to have a board member on the committee. This group has been meeting for 2 months. Well, not continuously, but I will tell you that they've been doing a lot of work for 2 months because we've asked them to look at approximately anywhere from 5 to 9 different curricula, depending on what their grade level band is. And that takes a lot of work on the teacher's part. Normally, I would pull them out of class and give them a couple of days to do that when they hang out and they get to touch all the new materials. But that's not our protocols. It's just too dangerous to lose all those teachers at once. So we are doing it all online, and it's working. But they've had to do a lot of the looking at curricula themselves, and they have been digging in. I know Mile High has been meeting separately as a group, and I just met with Granite Mountain last Friday to give them some more information so they feel more informed about what they're looking for. And I know the high school's been meeting themselves as well. So they have these separate meetings on top of the meetings we have, and they're really digging in. And they created their own rubrics so they know exactly what they're looking for. And it's hard because, as one person put it last Friday, a lot of these are really good now. The publishers are very good at meeting our needs and what we're looking for. They know what we're looking for. And so they just want to pick the right one for PUSD. And so they are supposed to tell me their preferences by tomorrow and a survey so that I have a better idea of which way we're leaning, so we can begin eliminating some of those, and some of them will come to the top, and we will have discussions about those that are on the top, and then hopefully we can make some recommendations. But of course, as you know, we put it on review for 60 days, and the public has a right to come in and look at it. We will give them some of the demo accounts so they can look at some of that, as well as come in and look at some of the hard copy materials of the ones that we are recommending. And then we will also have the teachers present to you why they chose what they chose.
But I think it's been a very collaborative process, but I'd love to hear from Cara about what she's thought of the committee work that we've done.
It's been an experience. I'm not an English teacher, so it really baffles me to look at all of the different texts and things. The only thing that strikes me is that it seems like so much of it is online, like so much of it is technology based, and I'm a little worried that our kids get too much FaceTime as it is, you know, screen time. So I guess I'm old fashioned that way. I would just really like to see like a book, textbook.
Right, well, I want you to know that, in fact, our K through 4 just adopted a curriculum, as you know, last year, and they have little consumable books that they get to use and write in and read and interact with a bunch. And so there is that component of it, that the kids get to do that hard copy stuff. And I know that in some of these cases with some of the curricula, we have these little readers that we would order and the kids would get to look at the readers as well. So it's really a hybrid curriculum for, in most cases. Rarely is it just all online. And in fact, with our Engage New York math curriculum, that was supposed to be all online, but we have worked with a school district to do the printing for us, and that's worked out really well. So I get what you're saying. You know, it's fun to touch the text and for the kids to be able to do that and to have those available, but we will have some hard copy things for kids. And
otherwise they you know, they all look interesting.
And it's fun to have the parents on the committee. We have 3 very active parents engaged. They come to every meeting and they're emailing me, asking me questions. And so that's been exciting to see them stay with it and be so involved in the process. And I know that they share information with some of the other parents and are asking other parents. So it's not just they're representing themselves, they're representing other parent groups as well. So it's been a very collaborative process, but I'm wondering what other questions you might have about this process.
You may have said this and I missed it, but when would you expect to bring a recommendation to us?
So it'll be April, because we have to put it on a 60-day review, and that is if we can come to a consensus by this Friday.
Okay.
I'm hoping. Because the reason that we would like to have that approved or some kind of curriculum approved is because we'd like to have it here by the end of the school year once we order it. Teachers love to do that kind of stuff over the summer, as you know, and our elementary teachers didn't get to do that, and that was tough on them.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate major changes from the current curriculum to this one? And if so, what those might be? I know we're not at the end of the process, so if you don't feel comfortable answering that, that's
I can absolutely answer that question. Currently, what we're doing is using our very old 2008 textbooks. And we're using some other supplemental things that we get provided by the state or that we've ordered, because when we adopted the curriculum in 2008, it did not include the new standards, because the new standards came in 2010. So to be honest with you, a lot of teacher creation of curriculum with approved resources, but it's just all over the place. There's a lot of variability going on right now. So the teachers are really excited about having everything right there, the reading program, the writing program, the grammar, everything, instead of them having to go out and find all of those things. And in fact, I don't know if I told you guys this, but when I asked Sebastian Pools, our first grade teacher at Lincoln, how he's liking his new curriculum for the elementary, he's like, I have a life now, because I'm not out there searching for things that are good for my kids. It's all right there. He goes, thank you for giving me back my life.
Okay.
Well, I think that's typical across Arizona, that you saw teachers grabbing for whatever they could, because if you remember, just only last year did we get our DAA, or our capital budget, up to where it was back in 2008. So basically Arizona was scrambling for all curriculum and capital items without money to do it. So it's been a trick. We use the term reducing variability, so we're all on the same page as much as possible. It's been really hard to reduce variability for the last 12 years, but we're getting back to that in a really nice way, I think. Don't you, Kelly?
Absolutely.
I appreciate you sharing a little bit about the process, the timeline, the committee makeup. I I love that parents are involved and Cara gets to be there. And I'm curious about the teachers that are included in this committee and this process. Are all of them ELA focused? And are there any educators involved that are from other traditional disciplines?
No, they're all ELA. Of course, you know, many of our ELA at 5th and 6th grade are also social studies teachers, but all of them are ELA teachers. We asked the principals who would be the leads for their school, and we ended up getting a lot more than we even wanted to. We have 33 people on the committee because a lot of the teachers wanted to be involved, and I'm like, I'm not going to hold them back. The more the merrier. If you want to give up your Friday afternoons, which that's when they meet, then that's great. But they are ELA teachers. It's always best to have the people with the expertise knowing what they're looking for.
Is there some sort of mechanism in this process where, like, a science teacher could also look at the proposed curriculum and see how that overlaps with scientific writing, or high school history teachers could look and see how that matches with some of the...
That's a great question. You know, it was happening naturally with elementary because they all teach just about everything. That is a great question, and it certainly is something we should look at. I know that one of our English teachers at the high school is also a social studies teacher, so got that one covered. But that's a great idea because they are incorporating more and more of the other topics or content areas within our textbooks because we're trying to show the kids the integration of material. So that is a great suggestion, and I'll put it to practice.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Kelly? Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Clark is going to share with us some minor revisions of some regulations.
I am. This is, again, just for your information. Happy to answer any questions. I'll make two very brief comments, though, about Kelly's agenda item just now. My wife teaches high school English at Prescott High School, and she's on the curriculum adoption committee, and she's been putting hours and hours into reviewing things and whatnot. It's been a very thorough process. My wife's kind of a thorough person to begin with, so something that might take you or I 2 hours, she puts in 4, and, you know, it's just, oh my gosh, it's terrific. But a couple of things. One, to Cara's great comment, again, boy, there's a lot of digital stuff. Sonia carried home something last night from the high school that was literally the size of a medium-sized suitcase full of books and materials and whatnot. There was nothing online about that, let me just tell you. It was all over our living room. So I don't know how that compares to the other materials, but there certainly are options where it's very, very tactile and less web-based. And then the other piece that I'll mention is kind of just echoing what Kelly mentioned about Sebastian Pohl's. Sonia is super excited to have a curriculum that everybody draws from, that they can compare notes really well and learn from each other, and also not have to be going out there and pulling things from here and there and kind of inventing the wheel every time she gets to a new unit and feels like she needs to add something and whatnot. She used the very same words. This is going to change my life. So hopefully that'll be the case. We'll see. All right, so I'm just presenting to you really briefly. We have multiple board policies, as you know. Many of them are regarding staff. All of our personnel policies are typically under the letter G, so if you ever look online and are interested in that. We're looking at regulations that are attached to board policy GCF and GDF, that are regarding hiring. So we're coming up on our main hiring season here pretty well. We actually posted our first position for next year already, band director. We know he's moving on, and that's a hard to fill one, and we want to find the right person. So we posted that yesterday and have had 4 applications for that in the last 24 hours, which is great. We wish we could do that for parapros at Lincoln, but we're getting some good interest there. At any rate, as we move into that season, one of my plans is, under Joe and Marty's direction, to get with our principals and other directors and talk about the hiring process and best practices and, you know, kind of the way to go through that. We have been so fortunate over the years. We attract really good people here to Prescott, and the vast majority of our employees, we look back on the hiring process and how well they're doing for us and how they're interacting with kids, and we say, man, we nailed it. But every once in a while we say, how did we miss that? So we're looking at that question. How did we miss that? What do we do to make sure we don't miss that, so to speak? And there's not a piece of something in the hiring process that doesn't let us know that, you know, we should have had a little red flag about that person, et cetera. The regulations that go along with this, have been shared with you, and they're in your packet, and you can see that the changes are very minor, but this connects to our application, online application, where it asks for your 4 most recent employers. And for a lot of people, that goes back into, you know, the late 70s, things like that. Here's my 4 more. I was at Baskin-Robbins from 1979 to 1983. Wow. We don't really care about that, frankly, but some people put that on there. We're interested, obviously, in recent and more applicable job experience. But at any rate, the regulation specifically says that our principals and supervisors who are doing the hiring need to reach out to 2 people from each past employer that's listed. That's essentially impossible in many cases. You can't find that person who was the manager at Baskin-Robbins in 1983. They're just not around. And we don't have their contact information in a lot of cases, et cetera. What we're really quite interested in, however, is finding out from very recent employers how this person is done. And in most cases, if we're looking at a teacher, they've taught someplace else recently, et cetera. So we don't really need 2 from each past employer, but we do need 2 from recent employers. So that's one change. The other change you can see here is that we're asking that instead of just doing, one of the features of the online application system is that supervisors can send a survey or a kind of a reference check in writing by email to somebody. So if we're looking to hire, say, Cara to teach math at Mile High, we can send something to the people that she's listed that has her references, and they can say, yeah, she's great. But we're asking principals to go one layer deeper than that and make an actual phone contact. So they talk verbally with someone, so they can pick up between the lines, this lady is spectacular, or that guy over there, you know, yeah, well, I guess we'd hire him again. You can kind of get a feel for that really well in a phone conversation or a face-to-face conversation, but not always through email. So we're recommending, or we're changing the regulation, I guess, and just reporting to you that of those 2 folks that we're getting with, instead of 2 at each past employer, which could be a total of 8 folks, 6 of whom are impossible to get with. Of the 2 folks we get with, we want to get with at least 2 or more. We want to get with at least 2 by phone and have a conversation. How was this person? So those are the changes. We're doing that for both our professional staff, or our certified staff, we sometimes refer to them as, and our support staff, or our classified staff. So there's 2 regulations that are attached to those 2 policies. The policies themselves are not changing, so we're not asking the board for approval of changing a policy, but we did want to make you aware of the process and the fact that we're constantly looking at policies and regulations and looking for things to make updates or improvements or come to the board and shift things to match with our current practice or best practice. So that's a lot of information. I usually do that. And by the time I'm done, people are like, I don't want to ask that guy any questions. He'll keep talking. So, but if you do have any questions, I'm happy to address them.
Questions for Clark? You covered it.
All right, because we have over 500 employees, this is super important. It's super important that we do this in a certain way. So we'll be making some changes, and hopefully that will make things even better. Thanks.
Thank you. Brian, what would you like to tell us about ESSER and COVID?
Sure. Answer any questions that you may have. We're continuing to look at our ESSER relief money as a means to meet immediate needs. Examples of those are the guest teachers that every school has to meet the substitute shortage, our COVID/distance learning liaisons that help that connection between them being at home and the teacher at school. We did hire a social-emotional counselor recently out of that, and also a half-time director. We did fund a kindergarten teacher at Taylor Hicks out of ESSER money, and then also we continue to have our district safety and health coordinator. So we're continuously looking at people needs. One thing that we are looking at coming in to the board in the near future is, let me get this right, a strategic intervention and remediation lead to help the sites really fine-tune the tools in their toolbox to help the learning loss and our interventionists, because we operate with interventions at 3 tiers. Tier 1 is in the classroom. Tier 2 is extra intervention that's needed in small group, and then Tier 3 can be like a pull-out remediation intervention program. We do really well with the Tier 3s and the Tier 2s. It's that classroom intervention, keeping them from being in Tier 2, that we just, even as principal at Taylor Hicks, always struggled in our meetings, what can we do more for this child? And so an example of possibly coming forward to using ESSER money is an interventionist lead that can help K through 12 to, fine tune our interventions at the schools. Deb?
I'm curious what characteristics we might be looking for with that interventionist.
Well, and we have lots of current staff members that do a lot of really incredible things. And so, obviously experience, being a teacher, but the problem is that our teachers have such limited time, and having someone dedicated to solely looking at each subject area, specifically ELA, math, the core subjects, and providing let's just say, once again, tools, they will have the time. That will be their job. Jody, you want to add
Yeah, if I
anything?
can add. Maybe some of you, but Kelly and Marty went to a couple breakouts at the ASBA conference that were really highlighting filling in the gaps and taking a look at different things that people are doing across the state with that. There's not great answers for that yet, but we're getting to a point where we can kind of take a breath instead of being reactive and start to shift this to proactive in terms of how we fill those gaps. So what we've been talking about and brainstorming with this position is that this would be a person that would kind of lead a separate strategic plan.
Yeah.
Right now we're relying probably too much on teachers to do that filling the gaps piece, and it's an extra piece on them that they're scrambling to try and do. But they're already doing an awful lot, and so our thought was that, kind of like the curriculum process, that we pull a group of teachers and have this person lead a strategic process to really look at out-of-the-box things like, how could we schedule it different to maybe even add a period and figure out, and then you assess these kiddos and figure out where their gaps are, and then you create courses to catch them up. And we all know that there were kiddos that didn't get algebra the way you'd normally get algebra when they were not in school during COVID, and they moved on without those skills. So we need to assess and figure out how to get them back into those skills. And this is in every subject area, but math rises to the top for this.
Yeah.
So it would be someone probably who's maybe more math focused, but a leader too that can pull together, and we'd all work together on a strategic plan for this. But probably a 2-year position, and maybe rolling into a third, because it would be this would be something not to go into our budget. This would be something that's part of ESSER. But I think we're starting to see that might be the best way to lead this into some real support for not just the kids, but for teachers in making it happen.
Yeah.
Well, and we have incredible interventionists, across the district, but they teach kids. Their job is to have small groups from the first period all the way to the end of the school. We've never had a situation or an opportunity, to have someone that's their sole focus. Look at the systems we have. Look at how we do our MTSS process. Look at what we do at the 3 tiers for interventions for math and ELA. And really turn every stone over and come up with a strategic plan that will take us well past the 2 years that we would be funding the position.
I have a question about the interventionist. Would there be a particular skill set that this person would have? What would be the job description for one interventionist or a group of interventionists? You said we have a lot of them as it is. So how would it be decided who did what and where and when? Is it one individual?
Yeah, the interventionists that I was talking about are ones we currently employ that are at the schools that serve our kids.
Okay.
This would be one individual whose sole job is to look at our district as a whole on how we provide intervention, what we could do more, how we could restructure the day to have intervention periods. And Joe?
Yeah, we started talking to principals, so to be determined. But we started talking to the principals about this and their eyes lit up because, you know, I mean, they're trying to do this, but on top of everything else. And so it's a piece where we think if somebody's just focusing on that, they'll be able to answer some of those questions that you have right now and that we have right now. And be able to ask teachers what they need and put processes in place where we're assessing and you know, really putting, you know, maybe structural processes in place like a different class period or that type of thing. So, so it would definitely, we're building that, but it would definitely be a leader who can help everyone come to the conclusion that's going to be the bang for the buck.
Who would be the person who would be, decide which students need what kind of help?
I think data would have to be, first of all, a very strong characteristic that we'd be looking for in this position, but we have Renee Steingraber who helps us with that, and then that person could do it as well, but we need to target according to their needs. And so I think we would know who to target based on the scores that we're seeing and assessments that we're giving, and also teacher recommendation, because teachers are working with kids daily. So.
True, okay.
I just have I feel a little bit like a broken record on this, but like, I see the ESSER funds as a lot of money, and not just to help our schools, but to help our community during the massive learning loss that's occurred, and just the way that's rippled out into the whole community. And so, you know, what I'm hearing, I'm intrigued by having a 2 to 3 year position or looking in that direction as a potential solution, as someone that could organize what you speak of as almost like a separate strategic plan. Like, okay, how do we set goals around this learning loss that we keep referring to? But it's also really complex. It's not just the math scores. And I keep hearing teachers over and over again, and teachers certainly have amazing insight into what we should be looking at differently over the next couple years as opposed to before pre-pandemic. But what I'm not hearing is that community question to parents, to guardians, to students about what we need.
I think that the answer is embedded in that. We haven't said it, but
We did.
you know, as an example, if, like right now at the high school for math, what we have are teachers staying after school working with kids one-on-one. And to me, that's a part of the community problem, right? Because parents can't always help their kids with higher math and all that. And so, you know, they have Fridays that they can do interventions, but that's a limited amount of time. You have one teacher with 30 kids in a classroom and they all have different needs. And so once again, our teachers can't handle the load of interventions that have to happen. And at the high school, we don't have math interventionists. So I guess to answer that question about community is what we're hoping to do is meet more kids' needs. Because this, and Deb went to it too, but the ASBA conference that we went to, I think you were at that too, the last slide said, we have to start meeting kids at the individual level. And we're doing that for a small population of kids who've always been our high needs. We've got to do it for more kids, right? So that we can help the community, the parents, like we're all wondering, what can we do to get these kids up? And I think if we can get somebody to help us think differently, to keep track of data constantly, moving people around, moving kids in and out of classrooms, you don't need this anymore, now you go back here. That takes so much coordination. And, you know, our administrators, there's no way. They know that's what has to be done, but they can't do it. So I feel like if we were reaching out to our community and asking them, what do you think we should use this ESSER money with? I would guess that many of them would say to tutor kids.
We did
Right, but
send
we haven't
home.
asked them.
Yes, we have.
We have,
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I
last
guess
week, we sent home
I haven't seen
the
that.
survey to all parents. It is also on our website for any community member to take, but we do have a method that we can send it out to parents through our Bright Arrow system. And so principals were directed to put that out to their parents in their weekly bulletin, and it's staying open through this Friday. And we'll look at how many parents have responded and open it longer if need be with a second reminder. But from the survey results, these are the things that came up as the top things.
And how many people have responded?
Not a lot.
It's going to take several rounds.
It's going to take several rounds, and we're required
we
to
just keep
continue to
surveying.
survey. but I think it's going to take more reminders, please, because, and even in a communication that just says, please take this, because we asked them to embed it in their weekly communication. But those that did reply, it was address learning loss, technology, summer school tutoring options, help with social emotional wellness, tools for parents to improve student engagement and academic success, continue to optimize cleaning and disinfecting and social distancing, and hire additional interventionists. Those were the common threads through the responses. And it's a common thread through our conversations on whether it's through conferences, networking with our other districts who are going through this at the same time. It's the common thread of what I think the ESSER money was hopefully given to us for, because it is going to have multiple year ripple on learning. So I'll bring the survey results continuing, and hopefully by the February's board meeting, it'll be more than just a handful. But it was interesting that even with just a handful, it's exactly the same priorities when we did send it out to our staff and asked, what could we use, and top 8 are exactly the same.
I'll share them in my report this week, and then, like I said, I think it's going to take a few rounds and maybe some evolution of the questions, and we'll keep asking.
Yeah, and I just think promoting that is important. I mean, if we only have a handful, we know that generally surveys, when we have a limited population responding, they are a little more engaged with education
Correct.
than probably
And
a
we're,
lot of our community right now.
So, and that's a lot of the people, we can use ESSER money on people stuff, resources, and then also stuff. Just an update on the capital list, the principals have, and department chairs are continuing to fine tune their list. It is at a point that it is coming to the district admin team to say, yes, we agree we need this, and we're going out and purchasing. An example is Stephen Peterson had on his capital list to have our fiber network upgraded to help with our internet access. We brought that to Dad on yesterday, and we're going to be going forward with that. And so that's where we're at with the capital list.
I just have, this is a stupid question, but do we actually have that money, or is it just like, you
No.
can get this money? Like, is it
So
in our bank
it is-
account yet?
No.
A credit card, yeah.
No. Unfortunately, the way it works is, and it's a little backwards. You'd like to be able to spend it and then, adjust your budget based on reality. But what happens is they have to keep on doing budget revisions. And so they put in a budget revision. So like for this fiber optic upgrade, it's going to be X amount of money. They don't have it budgeted, so we're going to have to tell Darla, our ESSER coordinator, please revise your budget to mirror what we would like to do. Until she does that, we can't spend the money. But but basically, once we need to pay, it's a reimbursement. So we request the money, then it's available to us. So it's as good as in our bank account, because it's an allocation, and it's based on a reimbursement request after spending.
I think that was an excellent question.
It would be a lot easier if it was right there, and we
I
could.
don't know, I've just heard lately, they've lost a couple $1 trillion in this, so I'm just wondering if it's gonna come back and bite us for a couple $100,000 or something,
No.
That would not be good.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No? Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Lexa.
Good evening. I have a number of updates, and then I'd be happy to take questions. First, just kind of a general update on what we're seeing in the schools. I would say last week was probably our calm before the storm. Just in the past 2 days, yesterday and today, we've had 62 cases district-wide. So we're definitely starting to see the Omicron wave here in our schools. Testing clinics. We are now just doing testing clinics on Mondays at Mile High from 3:30 to 4:30. I'm still working with the county on trying to set up a Thursday clinic. They have expanded their community testing clinics, but unfortunately they chose to do it out at the Humboldt Unified District Office. So that's not super convenient for a lot of our families. So still working with them. I'm hoping to get something here local that they can go to. We really need testing, and we really need help with testing. We're kind of at our capacity for what we can do here at PUSD in terms of offering testing clinics. In fact, yesterday, our testing clinic, we had 105 folks come through, 40 positives. That's a huge percent positivity rate. Nearly a 40% positivity rate, 23 of those were students. So that's the most positives, the highest positivity rate we've seen at one of our clinics. And then our metrics, we were declining through the holidays, and then last week our cases went up to 372 per 100,000 with an 18.4% positivity. And so just a reminder, those metrics are reflecting data from 12 days ago. They do that so that they have time to reconcile all their numbers and make sure that they're not duplicating positives, and that data that's reported late from the county health departments is included. So, well, I'm definitely thinking that in the next couple of weeks we'll start to see those metrics increase even more. And then lastly, you probably saw over the holiday break, the CDC updated their isolation and quarantine guidance, and then shortly after, AZDHS updated theirs. So I wanted to talk with you just briefly about what that means for us. So previous to the updated guidance, anyone who tested positive for COVID isolated at home for 10 days, and they were allowed to return on day 11 if they had no fever and their symptoms generally had improved. So the new guidance says that you can, if you test positive and you have symptoms, you isolate at home for 5 days from your symptoms starting. If you don't have any symptoms on day 6, you can return to school and return to the public, but you need to wear a mask for an additional 5 days just to protect those around you. And then for those who are asymptomatic and test positive, it's 5 days from their test date. And then they can return again with a mask for the next 5 days. And so when we're talking to families, we go through this and we make sure that they understand that the student needs to be symptom-free before returning to school. And we also make sure that they agree to wear a mask for the 5 days returning from their isolation. And then they have to check in with a nurse or the front office prior to heading to class that first day back, just to make sure that they don't have any symptoms. And then for anyone who's required to quarantine after a close contact, again, so we had a 10-day and a 7-day option for quarantine. So families who wanted to test on day 6 or 7, their student could return on day 8. Or if they didn't want to pursue testing, they could return on after day 10. So they adjusted that as well, and again, it's just 5 days. So it's a student has to stay home for 5 days after their close contact with a positive individual. Those who are excused from quarantine are those who are fully vaccinated, and then those who have had COVID in the last 6 months. And so COVID in the last 6 months is where we do vary from AZDHS's guidance. They recommend only excusing those from quarantine who have had COVID in the last 3 months. So we actually took this question to our Medical Advisory Council a couple months back, and that's made up of local health professionals and pediatricians and doctors in the area. And based on what they were seeing and reading, they felt comfortable that someone who's had COVID in the last 6 months is generally protected from contracting COVID again. And so that is a change. We previously were allowing any student who had had COVID at any time during the pandemic to be excused from quarantine. But here in the district, anecdotally, we were seeing many people test positive again, typically after 6 months from having COVID. And so the Medical Advisory Council also was seeing that in their work and made that recommendation to us. So those are the changes, the shortened version of what we're kind of doing. And so it's been a transition these past couple of weeks for our nurses and our admin. And so we're all getting our arms around all of this new guidance and communicating it to our parents so they know what that means for them. Questions?
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you, Alexa.
That was easy. I thought for sure you'd have many.
I think we're tired of COVID.
We've asked all of those questions. Keep asking them.
All right. one of the things that we decided at our last retreat was that we wanted, when we meet as a board, we're only allowed to discuss things that are on our agenda. We can't go off topic. And so as a result, we didn't really have an outlet for sharing things that we're hearing from the community. And so we have added a standing item to our agenda where we can share what we've been hearing from our community. So at this point, I'll ask if any of you have anything you would like to share.
That's number 6 on the last page, right?
Yes. I will tell you that I did have a communication from a gentleman who really wanted to come and address the board on a topic that is not likely to show up on our voting method. And I told him that I didn't see that as being likely, but that I would be happy to meet with him and let him share with me, and then I can share with you. I never heard back from him, so, but I did offer, so.
I've heard some concerns about ASBA, so why we're still associated with them, okay? Besides that, I would like to, there's another school board association that just formed. Could we invite them to give us a presentation?
What is that organization?
The Coalition of Arizona School Boards.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could if there's another board member that wants to see that on agenda, which I don't know that we've worked that out right here in the meeting on these agenda items, but that's what our policy says, that if 2 board members want something on an agenda, it can be on an agenda. I think we need to be careful with this item that we don't start solving the concerns that you bring up. I think you can bring up the concerns, but I don't know that we can solve them. But that's why future agenda items is a good item to have next, so.
Yes. Any other comments that you have? Okay, moving.
I do have one other comment. I've had lots of concern about cursive.
Oh, yeah.
And then I don't know if it's in the standards or not in the standards, if we can't teach it, or if we can teach it, and I'm like, okay, so can you just clarify for me? We don't teach cursive.
We do teach cursive, and we have.
Again, I don't think that we can address the
Okay.
issues
okay.
here. We can talk about
Okay.
what the issues are, and we can come back and have other further
Can you tell
discussion
me
items, but,
after?
yeah, we can do that too. Because then we'd be doing agenda items that we didn't tell the
Yeah.
community we were gonna
Okay.
talk about.
Gotcha.
Okay. Moving on to future agenda items, I would like to address our young ladies. Is there anything you guys would like to see us discuss at some point? And if you don't think of anything now, but you go home or you go to school tomorrow and you say, what would you like the board to talk about? Feel free to let us know those things, because we are here representing you. So I want you to know that you can have input here.
We'll issue you an email though if you.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
We'll think about it hard tonight. Sleep on it.
That's what I said.
I'm showing up at the high school tomorrow. No, I'm kidding.
All right. All right. Anything? All right. We are still trying to set up a retreat date with Humboldt, so we'll stay in touch with you. Hopefully, they elected officers tonight, and they've expressed some nervousness about meeting with us, so they'd like to work that out kind of ahead of time. So, or at least some of them have. And then we will meet again on February 1st, right here. Okay? we are adjourned.